Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our Healthy Lifestyles workshop. I'm so excited. Today we're going to be talking about air quality, and we are lucky to have our specialist here. And I really hope I don't mess up your name, but it's Mamta Chaudhary from Environmental Health. They're an environmental health scientist at the Environmental Health Division at the Air Quality Bureau. She graduated with a master's in public health in 2016, and it has been in her role here at the county since 2021. So we are very excited that she is joining us today, and I'm going to let you take it away. I will monitor the chat, so if you have any questions, you guys feel free to raise your hand, make a comment, or throw it in the chat, and I can read that out. And then don't forget to sign in. We have our sign-in link already posted in the chat so that you can get points.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, we can't hear you. Make sure let's see.
Can you hear me better now? Oh, and
Oh, really? I can't.
Yeah, I can
We have
hear
people in
her.
the office saying they can hear you. Hold on. Um, I'm at 100% volume.
okay, but Hannah can hear me? Or Brittany?
I can hear you. I've got you.
Okay. Okay, so I think I will.
Okay. Well, I don't know why Oh, I can hear you now.
Perfect.
Is it better now? Can you hear me a little better now?
Yes, you're clear.
Yeah,
Are you good,
I can
Kirsten?
hear you.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. All right, can you see my slides? Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you all about air quality in Salt Lake County. My name is Mamta Chaudhari. I work in the Environmental Health Division in the Air Quality Bureau. And let's get into it. So what we'll talk about today is the geography of Salt Lake County and how that kind of plays into our air quality here. Talk about federal regulations such as the Clean Air Act that help us kind of control our air quality. We'll talk about pollutants of concern when it comes to air quality and where these pollutants come from. So we'll talk about emissions inventories. And then we'll talk about climate change because climate change and air quality are very much interlinked. And then we'll go into some solutions on how to reduce our emissions of air pollutants and how we can protect ourselves personally and individually. All right, so if you live or work in the Salt Lake Valley, you know what a great place it is, what a pretty environment we live in. We're surrounded by mountains all around us. But because of this, it kind of is tricky when it comes to air quality. It creates conditions that can build up. So if you live here, you've heard of wintertime inversions. And that's kind of when the temperature gets inverted. So cold air kind of gets trapped in the valley, and the warmer air stays on top and creates a kind of a lid over the whole valley. And that doesn't allow air to circulate very well, doesn't allow air to get out. And so all the emissions that we have in the valley kind of get trapped and just concentrate into bad air quality conditions for us. And also because of our environment, we have a lot of summertime haze, and this is usually from ozone in the area. Ozone is interesting. I'll talk more about that later, but it's actually a secondary pollutant. It's not created and emitted. It's other things that um, chemically interact in the air to create ozone. So we'll get more into that as well. We also have a lot of dust storms in our area because we're surrounded by the desert. We have the Great Salt Lake, which is receding, as you've probably heard, and is exposing that lake bed dust. So we get a lot of dust storms in our area. And something I actually left off is wildfires. We have a lot more wildfires happening, and that usually is summertime as well. So we're kind of seeing a lot of year-round air quality conditions that could deteriorate and affect us. So to kind of get into how, in the modern day, how we first started thinking about air quality and how it affects our health, there were some significant air quality events that occurred. So in the US, in 1948, in Donora, Pennsylvania, there was a particularly bad air quality event in October that lasted a few days. The area of Donora was heavily influenced by a local steel plant. You know, most of the town worked there, and it was their main source of economic stability. But because of this steel plant, there were a lot of emissions coming from it and creating a lot of smog in the area. And the weather conditions in these days in October were such that it kind of trapped all that smog in that area. I think it's also kind of like a valley like we are. So it just kind of got built up, and there were a lot of hospitalizations. They think about 20 people died, 7,000 or more were sick, and it was really one of those first wake-up calls for the US to start thinking about air quality and how it can affect our health. And then this other event, oh, by the way, this photo on the left-hand side is a street in Donora, Pennsylvania, but it's thought that this photo was taken in the daytime. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much smog got built up. And then this picture on the right is from London. You've probably heard of the Great Smog of London. London during this time in the 50s was also, there was a lot of industry, a lot of coal power plants. So they were not unfamiliar with bad air quality, but during this time in December, again, the weather conditions were such that it really built up and created a very extreme air quality event. And they think there are probably 12,000 people that died because of these few days in December. So we know that air quality can really have an effect on us. And so these events kind of started the great environmental movement. So in the 60s and 70s, the US really started taking action and creating environmental laws. One of them was the Clean Air Act. It was established in 1970. And the EPA, Environmental Protection Act, was also created at this time. So what this act did was identify certain common air pollutants that are particularly bad for our health. There were 6 pollutants that they decided upon. They're called the criteria air pollutants. These include sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, ozone, and lead. So an interesting note about lead. Lead was quite an issue when it comes to air quality when we used leaded gasoline, but when the country made the switch to unleaded gasoline, it's virtually not a problem for us anymore. So that was very much a national success when it came to air quality. but it's still part of the criteria pollutants because it does have quite a it has a big health effect, especially for children and elderly. So with the Clean Air Act, the EPA is kind of the ones that oversee the whole program, but the states are the ones that create their plans to achieve the standards for these pollutants. And the EPA guides the states through making their plans. So for Utah, the State Department of Environmental Quality is the one that creates these plans. They're called State Implementation Plans, or SIPs. And for Salt Lake County, there are certain air pollutants that we tend to have issues with, and that would be PM 2.5 and ozone. We are currently listed as non-attainment for those pollutants, which means that we are not hitting the standard, the national standards. And then for PM10, we are under the maintenance category. And these terms are kind of regulatory terms, but in general, it just means that we're not hitting the standard. There are certain like time frames that you're supposed to hit, which is a lot of detail that we don't need to go into. But these three are kind of the ones I'm going to focus on today. And if you are interested, there is a new SIP that is available from the Department of Environmental Quality for public comment, and that should be coming out soon because we are not meeting the ozone standard. We need to create that plan, and that will go into effect soon. So for these pollutants, just to go into a little bit more of what they are. So PM 2.5, PM stands for particulate matter. And it's kind of, it's not necessarily identifying what they are, but just any material that is a size of 2.5 microns. And to kind of get an idea of what that is, this diagram here shows you compared to an average human hair, how big a 2.5 micron is. So they're quite small. And the reason in general that these air pollutants are so dangerous for our health is because of their size. When they're inhaled, they can get quite deep down into your lungs and cause damage. So mostly you're going to see respiratory effects and cardiovascular effects because they can even get into your bloodstream. So for PM 2.5, we're seeing that mostly from smoke, which can be from wildfires, wood burning, fireworks, and then secondary aerosols. So other things kind of react and create these PM 2.5 particles. And I think if you live or work here, you have experienced, for example, in the summer during wildfire season, seeing a lot of particulate matter in the air. You can feel it. So it's not great. And then we have PM10. It's just a different size, a little larger than the PM 2.5. And this we're usually seeing from dust in our area. When we get dust storms is when our PM10 goes up. But you can also see that from pollen and mold. And then we have ozone, which is a concern in our area. And like I was saying before, ozone is not actually emitted or created. It's other other chemicals that we emit that react in the atmosphere and create ozone. So just to distinguish, you've probably heard of the ozone layer in our atmosphere, and that is quite high and it doesn't affect us. Having the ozone layer is actually a good thing. It protects us from UVs and other things, but the ground level ozone is what can be breathed in and can be harmful for our health. So the main precursor for ozone are VOCs. VOC stands for volatile organic compounds. And a VOC is kind of anything that's aerosolized, like a solvent, spray paint, and anything that you can smell. So, for example, fragrances, when you can smell those are probably VOCs that you're smelling. Even if you go out in nature on a hike and you're smelling the sagebrush, those are VOCs that are being emitted. So all of the VOCs, they get emitted into the atmosphere. And then in the summertime, especially, we have a lot of sunlight and there's a chemical reaction happening that's actually quite complicated. And I'm not going to go into that chemistry because I don't even understand it myself. But it reacts to create ozone. So obviously, because of that sunlight component, we see a lot of ozone formation in the summertime, and that's when we have the main issue of ozone pollution in the Salt Lake Valley. NOx, which stands for nitrous oxide, also reacts with VOCs and sunlight to create ozone. And NOx you see a lot from vehicle emissions and industry. So those are kind of, when we try and control for ozone, what we're actually controlling for are the precursors like VOCs and NOx. And like I was saying, the main health effects we see from these pollutants are going to be respiratory diseases and cardiovascular diseases. So to kind of understand where these emissions come from, we should talk about the types, the categories that we kind of use to talk about them. So there are point sources of emissions, and these are stationary places, usually commercial or industrial. So think of like a refinery or a power plant. That's known as a point source. You can point and say this is where these emissions are coming from. We also have area sources, and those are basically a stationary source, but it's on a smaller scale, and it's too small to treat as a point source. So like a refinery we know is emitting thousands of emissions, thousands of, I can't remember the metric now, a lot of emissions. But for example, a farm we know has emissions, but we can't, it's not on a larger scale. So a farm, restaurants, things like that. They're stationary, they're not moving, but they're on a smaller scale. And then mobile sources are things that do move. So we have on-road sources, which are like our vehicles, our cars. And then we have non-road sources. So these are things like trains, airplanes, etc. So thinking of that, the Department of Environmental Quality does annual emissions inventories of our area to understand where these pollutants are coming from. So here are some graphs of the different pollutants. There's a lot of information here, so you're welcome to kind of study them more on your own. But if we look at the PM10 graph, we see that a majority of our PM10 emissions are from area sources. So these are things that are on the smaller scale. So thinking about smaller scale restaurants, businesses, farms, things of that nature. PM10 we see a lot from dust and construction, so probably a lot of construction sites are in this category. Down here at PM 2.5, as I've talked about before, wildfires. So we see almost half of our PM 2.5 coming from wildfires in our area. Quite a bit, a fourth or more, coming from area sources. Over here at our VOCs, a large portion is biogenic, and biogenic is mean from our environment. So like our plant life and things of that nature. So it's actually very interesting. Our environment is something we can't necessarily change. And so controlling for VOCs, which is ultimately controlling for ozone, is a challenge because so much of it is just what our environment is like. But there is quite a bit that we can control for. So what we can control for are these sources of the area sources, non-road, road sources, um, VOCs, refuel. Um, so it's a bit, it's a complicated situation, but something we still need to be looking at and trying to figure out a solution. And similarly, NOx is very much, a majority is from on-road, so vehicles. So trying to get newer vehicles, maintain our vehicles, making sure they're not emitting more than they should be, or even switching to electric vehicles so there are no emissions. There's a lot here from point source as well, and this is probably from industry, power plants, things of that nature. Okay. All right. So climate change is something that is here and we need to think about, especially when it comes to air quality, because air quality is really the driving force of climate change. And when we think about what to expect, what the climate change predictions are, we know that our area is probably going to see increased wildfires. We already experience them now, and it's probably not going to go away, unfortunately. And this is locally and regionally. We know that a lot of our wildfire emissions are coming from West California, Oregon area. And this graph here is kind of showing us an upward trend of increased frequency, extent, and severity of wildfires. So that's something that we should keep in mind. And also, there's an expectation of increased dust storms because we are still in a drought, even though we had a pretty good winter precipitation. We're still not out of our drought, and the Great Salt Lake is still expected to be receding. This graphic kind of shows you how much of the lake bed has become exposed since 1985. And that exposed lake bed could potentially get kicked up in winds and create dust storms. And there's some news and talk lately about what is in that lake sediment. There has been some early research that there could be some hazardous pollutants, toxic pollutants. So there's more research going on about that, but something to keep in mind. And then we also have that big desert to the west of us that is a big source of dust. So those are kind of what we're looking at, but let's talk about, oh, one more thing. We also are expected to be growing. So Utah is an economy that is constantly growing. We know this because we see people, we see construction every day, we see our population growing, our economy growing. So along with this, we get more air pollution, we get more vehicles, more dust from the construction. So that's something to keep in mind. However, on the bright side, Utah emissions are actually quite low if you compare them to the national average. Utah emissions make up 1.1% of the national emissions, which is quite a good thing to hear. And that's because we do have quite a few air quality programs to control our emissions that have been successful. But we also don't want to be content. We don't want to just let our guard down because we are growing. So we need to keep up with it. And because of our environment, we have a lot of natural sources of air pollutants. We need to do more than probably other places to make sure we are keeping our air quality down and taking care of our health. So some of those programs that reduce our emissions that we have now and are quite successful, one of them is the inspection and maintenance program for vehicles. So this is also known as the vehicle emissions program, which you probably remember once a year when you have to get an emissions done on your vehicle to register it. This program is managed by us here in air quality for Salt Lake County. And the idea behind this is you need to make sure your vehicle is running well, is maintained so that you're not polluting more than you should be. And we do have this pretty cool program, the Vehicle Repair and Replacement Assistance Program. Let me show you the website. So do you see the vehicle repair website here?
Yes, we can see on the screen.
Awesome. Just wanted to make sure. So this is the Air Quality Bureau website, and you can find the specifications for the program, the qualifications. There, it is income level based, so you can figure out if you qualify using this table. This is the repair portion, so you can get up to $1,000 toward repairing your vehicle. And there's also a replacement portion where you can get some funds to get a newer vehicle that emits less than your old one. You can get up to $7,560 toward replacing your vehicle. So it's a pretty cool program that you can check out. Another way to reduce our emissions is to get into electric vehicles. That's slowly happening in our area and nationally, but electric vehicles are great because there are zero emissions, which is good for especially our area because we want to get those emissions, if not totally gone, at least out of our valley so that we don't end up trapping it during inversion. So that's a great option. Another option is just to use other forms of transportation, public transit, carpooling, try some active transportation such as bicycles. And a cool thing that recently come up is the UCare e-bike incentive program. You can get a voucher toward buying an electric bike. So check that out. That's pretty cool. And then the Department of Environmental Quality puts out air action alerts every day. And this is used during the winter time. There is a wood burning ban from November to March. And depending on the air action day, wood burning is actually not allowed because of predictions in the weather and what the air quality is going to look like. Let me show you this website. Okay, so here is the air action forecast. So you can see today we're a moderate health level and we have a voluntary action today. So for Salt Lake County, if this was November, a voluntary action actually means that you should not be burning. And also they have mandatory actions. It has like an X symbol, and that's also a day that you should not be wood burning. This is also useful even when it's not the winter months to kind of understand what the air quality is going to look like and kind of use as a guide. Maybe if you're thinking about having a little fire pit in your backyard, and you see that it's a voluntary action or a mandatory action day, maybe you consider not burning that day. And just so you know, we have a moderate health day, most likely because of our ozone levels. Summertime, we get some high ozone levels, and we see here in the current conditions, our ozone is getting a little high. Our PM 2.5 is looking okay. So that's probably why the forecast is in the moderate health today, and also for the next 2 days. But that's a great tool and a great guide to use. And then finally, there are a lot of options here for reducing our emissions. Here are just a few, but also we could start electrifying our landscaping equipment. So leaf blowers and weed whackers use a type of engine that is actually quite inefficient and produces a lot of hydrocarbons, which are a type of VOCs, and so then that contributes to our ozone, especially in the summer months when we're using our landscaping equipment. So converting to an electric leaf blower, electric lawnmower is a really good way to tackle that ozone. And now we can move into our individual protection. So air quality can seem kind of daunting because it is such a big, it seems uncontrollable and kind of out of our hands. But what we can control for is our indoor air and what the air looks like in our home. And the way to do that is maintain your HVAC systems. So you want to make sure you're changing your filters regularly according to manufacturer instructions, or even just when you can visibly see that it's dirty, just go ahead and change your filters out. If you want, you can upgrade your filters to a higher MERV rating, which filters out more. Just make sure you don't just swap it out for the highest rating you can find, because sometimes your HVAC can't handle it and it could potentially damage your HVAC system. So just make sure you're consulting your manufacturer handbook or maybe an HVAC professional. Another great option is an air purifier unit. So like a standalone unit that has filters in it has been shown to be very effective at cleaning out your air. A downside to air purifiers is they can be a little expensive, and sometimes the marketing is a little tricky to understand. You don't want to get things that say like ionizing, because that can actually create ozone, and that would not be a good thing. But any air purifiers that use like HEPA filters are a great option for cleaning your air. And then you also want to ventilate your home. So when the air quality is good outside, opening your windows, getting that fresh air in is really good. You don't want to have a home that's too tight and closed off, because then your air becomes stagnant and it's not cleaning out. So opening your windows are great. However, you do want to make sure the outdoor air quality is not bad. If it is bad, keep your windows closed. And a way to know what the outdoor air quality is like is to use a tool that kind of tells you your air, the air index for the day. On our website, we have this air quality map that you can check out, and I'll show you. So this is the AirView real-time air quality map. This shows you PM 2.5 levels around Salt Lake County. And what's really cool about this map is it shows you real-time data, and it also kind of shows you, like you can zoom in to where you live to see what the air quality is like. Because the air quality isn't going to be green in all parts of the county. There's going to be variations. There are different micro environments where, depending on what's around you, if there's like a refinery to the north that's emitting a lot more that day, then the north area could be higher on the scale than the south end. Right now, it looks like we're seeing a little bit of a increase of PM 2.5 down south. So that's kind of interesting to see. So this is a great tool to use to know if you should open your windows that day or not, or if you should go on a walk outside today or not. So make sure keep yourself informed. Okay, so back to air purifiers. Like I was mentioning, they can be kind of expensive. So we really like to talk about these DIY air purifiers. They're really simple to make on your own. You just use air filters that you buy for your HVAC. And with these, you can get the highest MERV rating and use just a box fan to create a little mini air purifying unit. And I'll just show you this quick how-to video. It's loading. Give me a moment, sorry. Okay. Finally, take the fan onto the filters and the shroud onto the fan. You can plug in your new policy Roosevelt lock. Depending on use, replace filters and cardboard every 6 months or so. Enjoy your clean air. Sorry, did you hear that okay? I think I got a message to turn it up. So basically, you're just taping the filters together. You want to make sure the box fan is pointing upward, so the air goes in through the filters from the side and then comes up out the top of the box fan. And there are a lot of instructions, a lot of videos online. So this can be a great lower cost option. I'm not going to say it's low cost because the initial cost can be about $100. But then after that, you're just changing out the filters when they get dirty. This was highly promoted during COVID because it also was very effective at reducing the COVID virus. And a lot of schools really liked using these, and it can reduce your aerosol exposure up to 73%. So these are great. I highly encourage you all to look into this if you are interested in an air purifier. So that's all I got for you. I hope that was a bit informative, and I am happy to take questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? You can throw them in the chat or you can just pop on your mic.
question. What are some simple things that I can do every day to kind of decrease the impact I'm personally making on the air? Is it just kind of taking public transportation, or what else can I do?
Yes. Looking at how you get around, a lot of us are using vehicles, which if you have an electric vehicle, great, you have no emissions. But if not, yeah, just kind of reducing how much you ride in a vehicle. There was a good a tip that someone told me once. If they get somewhere with it, if they can get somewhere in less than 30 minutes, then they try to do something other than drive there, like biking or taking a bus or carpooling. So that's pretty cool. I try and do that, although I'm not perfect and it's hard. But honestly, just even reducing like one trip a week probably saves quite a lot. Um, and then on like a bigger scale, you can try to advocate for like renewable energy. I know that there are some initiatives out there to um, like with the power companies to you can like buy an extra you can like buy like a renewable energy block or something like that, so that a portion of your energy is from renewable energy. So that's pretty cool and um, something to try and change like overall where we get our energy from. Uh, so those are a couple ideas. I think there's a lot out there.
We did get a thank you in the chat from Lynn Erickson. Thank you for the DIY air purifier suggestions. So that was great. Anyone else have any other questions before we let everyone go? Okay, well, perfect. Thank you so much for your time. Please don't forget, you guys, to sign in. The link is in the chat. And then also, of course, just a little plug, we have our fire safety workshop at the Viridian Center this Saturday at 10 a.m. We'll have the West Jordan Fire Department there. They will have a rig there for us to explore. They'll also do a presentation on fire safety. And you can bring your friends, family, kids, grandkids, whoever you would like to that event. So that's 10 a.m. at the Viridian this Saturday. Other than that, I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
Mamta. Bye.
Bye.
By President Trump in the 2020 election to overturn